Welcome into the modern crash course on the Caro-Kann Defense, where I'll explain all the main ideas of the opening without memorization, and I'll also address all the common questions you guys ask me about. I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov, and let's go ahead and get started. The Caro-Kann Defense arises from you responding to the first move pawn to e4 with the move pawn to c6, getting ready to play d5, gaining some space in the center. Why Caro-Kann? First of all, it's very simple. You narrow it down to the Caro-Kann Defense, just one opening, you don't have to know anything else. Secondly, it's a very secure opening. You prevent your opponent from developing the bishop this way, targeting your weakest pawn on f7, think of the fried liver attack, even scholar's checkmate, and whatnot. Here your position is very secure. A little downside is that thanks to this pawn on c6, you cannot develop your knight normally, which is a slight drawback, and overall, because you're having a little bit fewer space, your position is very solid and yet not very aggressive. But don't worry, I'll show you later how to handle that and how to spice things up. As you've attacked your opponent's central pawn on e4, white is at the crossroad. They can run and hide, they can take on d5, this is what beginners usually do, the simplest, but not the best move. Also knight c3, just defending this pawn, the classical approach, and also pawn to e5, the so-called advanced variation. We will talk about all of them. e5 is the most common move, let's start by this one. e5 aims to prevent your kingside knight from being developed. Also, your other knight is not easy to develop because of your own pawn, and overall white claims some space advantage in the middle of the board. Now, what do you do about that? First of all, your knights, don't worry about being passive. After all, who wanted to ever work, you know? Now, at this point, you've got two main approaches. The way that pros usually handle it is the bishop f5 followed by pawn to e6, where you're getting a pawn structure similar to, the London system or the Slav defense rather. The disadvantage is that there are a lot of different variations here. In this position, white can literally play g4, c4, h4, knight e2, and whatnot. Now, again, there is no problem there, but it's a little bit more complex. And in light of that, I recommend that you go with a move pawn to c5, which for beginner to intermediate level works the best. Why is that? Usually, white players don't know how to handle that. The correct way here is to capture this pawn on c5, and after that, white also needs to know the follow-up. But very few of, amateur players really know all these intricacies, and usually here, they just continue with pawn to c3, playing by analogy with the French defense, trying to preserve their pawn structure, but in reality does not create any problems for black, because here you can develop the knight while also putting some pressure to this pawn, and later your bishop can be developed actively to g4, pinning this knight down to the queen, and overall you're getting something very similar to the French defense, but a much better version of the French defense, because instead of being locked on c8 here and beat a bad bishop, your bishop is already on g4, on this very active position. Plus you have a clear plan. Your plan is to put pressure down to this pawn on d4, and overall trying to attack white's pawn chain. The very common maneuver, it is to move your knight here and then here, which will add more pressure to this pawn on d4. Since your knight cannot be developed this way because of white's pawn there, it's very natural to do it this way around. Knight e7 followed by knight to f5. Many of your opponents will play pawn to h3, trying to get rid of your bishop, but in fact it's wrong. It just wastes time because taking this knight at some point actually was part of your plan. This knight on f3 guards the pawn, and in order to attack it effectively, you don't mind trading it off, and now white just wastes some time pushing you basically into the direction that you wanted to go anyway. Now, after an exchange, you can now go knight to f5 and attack this pawn. By the way, another question is, should you... Oh, I'm sorry, let's go back there. Should you take here on d4 or not? I mean, both ways are possible. If you just trade on d4 right away, the advantage is simplicity. I mean, you simplify the position, but the disadvantage is now there is no pawn on c3, therefore white can develop his knight normally. And it's actually better not to let him do that so easily. You can go knight f5 right away and add one more attacker to this pawn. Now you've got 3 attackers. Now, at first you may be thinking, hey, so what's the problem? Can't white simply take it? I mean, they can, but it's not very good. It destroys their pawn center. It lets you develop your bishop to an active position. Now this pawn on e5 is also hanging, and overall you've got a great game. Therefore, it's not what white really wants. Instead, they will usually try to hold on to this pawn chain, and in particular to this pawn on d4 by playing bishop to e3, guarding the pawn that way. And now you've got another super common move for all these positions, which is queen to b6, which comes with a double attack. You add one more attacker to this weak pawn on d4, but on top of that you also hit this pawn on b2. And from there the queen will also attack the rook. It's very annoying, and here white is already kind of begin to go down. For instance, if they defend this pawn anyhow, you can already begin taking in the center because you have more attackers than defenders. Now this pawn falls, the pawn on e5 also becomes weak. Your knights are very active, they're attacking these both bishops. If white keep trading, no problem, queen takes d4, comes with attack of the rook of this pawn. If white keeps trading, then you basically reach this winning endgame where you're already a pawn up. The knight threatens to go to c2 and capture the rook, or to take on f3 and ruin white's pawn structure, and again you're already up a pawn. Of course, your opponent could play something else, and in light of that, let me show you also a classical situation. Let's say you traded on d4, and let's say queen b6 is unavailable for whatever reasons. So what is your usual setup here? Your bishop will come to e7, of course, because that's the only normal available square. Then you castle. Again, your position is super solid. Both bishops of white are kind of locked. This one is locked by his own pawns. It looks like a tall pawn. The other one is locked by your central pawn chain. Now then, you will probably play something like rook to c8, putting your rook to this open file. And on the next turn, again, you have these two classical ideas to attack this pawn on d4. One is queen b6, which we have seen before. The other one, bishop g5, is a great positional idea. You trade off this defender of the pawn, and after this exchange, the pawn on d4 becomes weak, you attack it twice, and actually, you're about to win it. Because even if white tries defending it, you grab the pawn anyway. That's a nice little tactic, which is useful to know. Here the idea is, after an exchange, it looks like white can just win the knight. But it's not, because you can then play rook takes c1. And in this line, you're just winning the exchange. Notice our queen from g5 defends the rook, and we're winning. Instead, if white tries capturing this rook on c8 first and then winning your knight, you don't want to lose the knight, so you first trade on f3 with a check, and then you end up with an extra pawn, you control an open file, and it's a technically winning position. Next up, the exchange variation where white simply trades pawns on d5. Now, by doing that, they actually solved your main problem. When the pawn was on c6, it didn't let your knight to jump out to this normal square, but not anymore. And you can easily see how this variation is inferior for white compared to the advanced variation. And here, both of your knights can be developed normally, and you've got no issues at all. Now, compare this to the advanced variation, where you can develop this knight or this one. That was a challenge, and you had to work around that. While in the exchange variation, you've got no problems at all. Now, you just develop all your pieces naturally. One thing is, you don't want to play e6 right away, because then your light square bishop will be locked behind the pawn chain. You do want to first develop this bishop and only then lock the pawn chain. Now your position is harmonious and absolutely good. Then you simply develop your knight, and sometimes they will play pawn to h3, attacking your bishop once again. There's absolutely nothing wrong with retreating the bishop back to h5, but I actually recommend that you simply trade it off. Why is that? If you don't trade off this knight on f3, at some point it can jump forward to e5, and you'll have to think what to do about that. Of course, it's not the end of the world, but it's easier to prevent this. And there is one more idea, which we talked about before. This pawn on d4 becomes weaker, because now there is no defender from this f3 square. And very often white underestimates that. They just play casually, developing their pieces, and at some point you play that same move, queen to b6, with a double attack of the pawns, and there is no way for white to defend them both. If white defends one of them, you just capture the other one with a technically winning position. And I know, it's very far from actually winning, but that's another subject. If you want to know, by the way, how to convert winning positions into a victory, I've got a free masterclass about this. I'll drop the link below. You can watch it after this video. Moving on to the next line, where white develops a knight and defends their central pawn that way. What do you do here? You gotta take on e4, because otherwise you don't really have any meaningful move to play. You cannot develop your bishop normally across this diagonal, because all these squares are already taken away by white. Similarly, you do not really want to develop the knight, because then white will attack it right away and push it back. Therefore, you first trade on e4, destroying white's pawn, center, and then you play knight to f6, challenging this knight on f6. This is the easiest and the safest move for black to play, because now, of course, you gotta be ready to deal with the alien gambit, which we'll talk about in a moment, but in the main line where white simply takes on f6, you recapture with this pawn, and you have a super solid position here. You don't have to know any lines really, you just develop your pieces, bishop d6, you castle. Notice that your king employed one more little bodyguard right here on f6 on top of the 3 usual ones, and your position is rock solid here. This pawn also covers all these squares, therefore white cannot easily develop their bishop there or their knight here, and again your position is totally safe. White will probably wish to castle to get their king out of this open file, then you bring the bishop out, pinning their knight. It's quite annoying for white. They can try to kick your bishop out, but you can maintain the pin, and in this case, yeah, it's a little bit uncomfortable for white. Then they'll usually play some usual development moves. You will play queen to c7 to complete your development, connecting the rooks, and then on the next turn you will probably put your rook into this open file on e8, and then you've got, again, just a nice solid position for the middle game, and I'll tell you also a couple typical middle game plans. Here, first off, what will white play here? The pin is still a little bit annoying. If white ever goes g4, good for you, now their king is weakened, and your bishop simply retreats back to g6. After this trade, your king is now in this cubicle, pretty cool, but also rock solid, while the white king is very exposed. Some of your aggressive opponents will build up this battery hitting your pawn on h7, but it's important not to be reactive, but ignore it. You can take on f3, rooting their pawn structure. It may look dangerous as you ignored this threat, and what if white simply captures it? No problem, you retreat to h8, white recaptures the piece, and then you go pawn to g6, and now this bishop is trapped. White was okay with that, because now it looks like white can just sacrifice the bishop right here, gaining a couple pawns and totally opening up your king, but not so fast. Rook g8 just wins the queen. Finally, if white plays a more modest move, bishop to e2, trying to unpin this knight, then what do you do here? Now again, I'll show you a couple very common maneuvers here. Typically you want to reroute this knight from d7. Why? Because this pawn on e5 took away all the squares, all the forward squares where your knight could possibly go to, and therefore you want to redeploy it to a better square. Sometimes you can move it here and then to e6, because from here it can already jump forward, or a more easier and straightforward path is to go to b6 and then to d5. After white plays something, let's say knight d2, they want to neutralize this pressure. After an exchange, you could land your knight to d5 to this excellent central square, and that's good, but in this position you have an even stronger move. This pawn on f6 originally performs a rather defensive function, but also it is a spare pawn that you have, and you can also use it for more aggressive ideas. You can just start pushing it forward. Surprisingly, in this position, there is no way for white to stop it, and you just play pawn to f4 because of this pin, and even if the queen gets out of the way, f4 still simply captures this bishop and wins a piece. Now, how do you deal with the bad boy, the alien gambit, where white aims to sacrifice their knight on f7, which is not sound, but extremely difficult to deal with, especially in blitz, where your king is exposed and your opponent has numerous tricks. I recommend that you prevent it before the alien gambit even occurred. You don't play h6, encouraging this knight sacrifice, but strike in the center right away, kinda seizing the initiative. Now, what do I do about this? If white captures on c5, they never really want to do that, because you then trade on d1, forcing their king to move, and of course white's attack is over. That would ruin their plan completely. Therefore, white probably will wish to do something else. Maybe knight to f3, just defending this pawn. Then you do the same, attacking the pawn once again. What if bishop c4, hitting your f7 pawn? Well, then it's pretty straightforward. You just go pawn to e6, covering the diagonal and opening up the diagonal for your bishop. Now what? Let's say white castles. At this point, you can already play h6 and force this knight to make a decision. Now you've developed your position already, you've put some pressure here to the center, and therefore you are ready for this unsound sacrifice. And what do I do now? The knight cannot retreat back to e4 because you control this square with your knight. If the knight comes back to this passive square on h3, then their attack obviously failed. This knight just wasted a bunch of time, and you can safely grab this pawn in the middle of the board with a great position. If white insists on that sacrifice, then you recapture it, and what can white do now? you're still attacking this pawn on d4, 3 times actually. Alright, again, if white simply captures here, no problem, you trade queens, and white's attack is over, then you recapture the pawn, not like that, and life's good. If white tries knight to e5 check, attacking your king that way, in the usual lines of the alien gambit, this might be dangerous, but here you just trade off, and after that you don't have to worry about your knight because you can once again trade off queens. And now, after the queens are traded off, your position is absolutely secure. Now you move your knight away, attack this pawn, and you end up with an extra piece in an endgame, and you should be able to win it. Again, if you're curious how to convert positions more stably into a win, I've got a free masterclass about this. I'll link it somewhere on the screen or down below. Also, Caro-Kann is a positional chess opening, and if you like it, you may love this positional chess guide from Capablanca himself, the king of positional chess. Check this out.